I would ask the question, how do you think this building we are in right now, this house, this home was built? Well, it was one step at a time, but it started with a blueprint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It didn't even start with the footing. It started with a
Right.
blueprint that you can refer to make sure your dimensions are right. Every layer is put in exactly properly. Well, welcome to Pillow Talk. I'm Grant. This is my wife, Stephanie. And after almost 38 years of marriage, we've discovered how to communicate for better understanding and yoke our differences to pull stronger toward a common purpose.
As certified marriage coaches, we want to help reignite passion and connectedness in your marriage through intimate, authentic, and unguarded conversations. Now let's have some pillow talk.
Let's do it. Hey, welcome to Pillow Talk.
Hey, y'all.
Man, we have had a great couple of weeks, or two of the last three, or whatever you want to call it. We got to travel to Alabama and do a little one-night conference at a church. And then we got to travel to Ohio and do a one-night, all-day Saturday
Retreat.
retreat.
From nice and, well, kind of warm to very cold.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference for sure.
No, it was really awesome. We really enjoyed meeting the people. Fantastic community of people, what they're doing in their communities, and just getting to encourage their marriages. It was really fun. So if you guys are listening out there, you know who you are. And we really enjoyed being with you.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun. Enjoyed it. On Pillow Talk, we don't want to ever make people think that, hey, those guys think they got it all together. Because we've definitely had some fun times, ain't we?
Yeah.
And so, but marriage is a growth process. And if anybody had to grow, it was us. We got married at a very young age of 17 years old, like we've mentioned before. We had to learn so much, and it's kind of like just being thrown in the deep end of a pool. And it seems like it just for probably the first 5 years didn't click real well. And then it started to click, but it took the next 30 years to.
We're kind of like a crock pot. It takes us a while. We have to simmer a little bit. Well, we were 17, so we hadn't even learned. We weren't even thinking about being an adult yet. Adulting, that's the big thing right now. We didn't know.
Well, I'd say we were thinking about it because we thought we were.
Well, yeah, but I don't think we were thinking about the reality of adulting. So I think that, the perfect storm was, having to be responsible for a choice that we did choose, that we just chose early. It was always a choice we wanted, and it's paid off phenomenally. We have a fantastic family. But the nuances of that, just being new parents, period. But doing that when you're 18 years old was definitely hard. I think we had to kind of put marriage on the back burner as we kind of had to just, keep up the pace of making sure that we took care of our daughter and
definitely had to make sure we didn't fail at parenting.
Right.
Loved her and I think a lot of couples get into that. They're afraid of, not afraid. That's the wrong word. They put so much focus on one that they put no focus on the other. And that's kind of where we were at. We just didn't make a whole lot of effort to learn each other.
Yeah. You have kids. You have to keep them alive. So that's kind of a big focus.
It is a good thing. They've been known to throw people in jail for not.
So it's not that. Yeah. So it was, yeah. So we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Many years ago, we attended a conference and came across a named John Maxwell, who is probably in the top 2 or 3 most influential people outside of family members in our lives, maybe including some family members for sure. And we bought how many thousands of dollars of books and stuff. It's just unreal what we've done.
Education.
We've had a college education in the John Maxwell way. I'm actually certified with the John Maxwell team. And he released a book a few years ago that has always been a favorite of ours.
Yes.
Called The 15 Laws of Growth. I would highly recommend it. Now, when I say that, you're not going to read this book and immediately think of marriage. It is written to the corporate world and towards personal growth. And it's called The 15 Laws of Growth. And so what we've done is we were in the process of going through this book, and we thought, if it's truth, it's truth, right? So it means it applies everywhere. So we just started looking at it from a marriage viewpoint, and I think we've gained a lot of things we'd like to share with you on the podcast from this book. So
yeah, I just think that sometimes we do get a little bit stuck in that it has to be a marriage resource. And what you just said, truth is truth. It's kind of like there is no such thing as a business ethic. It's just ethics. Well, there is no such thing as business growth and marriage growth. And that's hard to say. It's hard to say. It is just growth.
Well, it's personal growth, and that makes it work everywhere.
Right, yeah. Right. And it's just, but a few of the things in the book, I remember years ago when I first read that, it's probably been 10 years that came out and I read it.
Oh,
and
probably.
It's one of those kind of manuals that I go back to a lot because it's a really easy read too, as far as short chapters. But so many of the things, even back then, we would talk about like, wow, this makes sense. The whole hammer thing. And I won't give away all the secret sauce there, but anyway, so it is definitely something that you can take and apply to marriage. There's some fantastic applications.
So we've tweaked it, and we are calling this the 15 laws to thrive in marriage.
How about that?
Let's thrive in marriage.
Thrive in marriage, not just grow.
I want to change that because that's Stephanie's word, and I'm aiming to be a good husband and make some brownie points.
You're making brownies tonight? Yeah.
I will gladly make brownies tonight.
I think for me, it's the words. Words mean something. Jordan Peterson says that words mean something. So be careful with the type of words that you use in a good way too. And I think growing is good, but I think thriving. I'm a gardener, and I have plants in my house that are growing, but they're not thriving. When I put them in a different environment, they begin to thrive. So we want to try to help you put your marriage, even if it's growing well, into a thriving environment.
I love it. First law of a thriving marriage is to be intentional. What do you think about that one?
Well, I intend to apply that. I think it's a great way to start because, if you don't do something with what you are hearing, then it doesn't work. So there has to be some, I'm having a hard time talking tonight.
Well, you get your tongue over your eye teeth and you can't hear what you're saying.
I'm going to have to let you go with this one.
I doubt that happens. We all know how this ends up. So, here's the thing. How can you be intentional if you don't have a plan?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so good.
So we have to have a plan to grow. And if you're going to do that, then it's going to take a little bit of effort. And so that's what we kind of hope to help guide everyone through on this podcast.
Well, intentionality says that a thriving marriage doesn't just happen.
Right.
Or personal growth doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
There's intentionality involved.
Yeah. It's not just a natural process.
Right. It's not just a pretty word. It's legit.
So one thing like I've always liked to refer to is the house building. And it's because
we did it for a long time.
We did it for a long time. I understand the process. I understand you can't put the roof on before you dig the footing. So I would ask the question, how do you think this building we are in right now, this house, this home was built? Well, it was one step at a time, but it started with a blueprint. Yeah. It didn't even start with the footing. It started with a blueprint that you can refer to make sure your dimensions are right. Every layer is put in exactly properly.
Which sounds extremely difficult and overwhelming, but it really even starts before that. It's what's the picture of the house that you are dreaming about?
Yeah.
So before you even draw it on a piece of paper. And then it's just making sure that, things kind of fit. Not that you don't tweak it, but it gives you a roadmap. It gives you direction. And it gives you a vision that you can run with when you begin to build. And
then you even got the scripture, before you build the house, you got to count the cost.
Yep.
And, so it doesn't do no good to get the house built and have to sell it.
Yeah.
Your marriage, it does no good to have a $10,000 wedding. You have to say, we can't do this. It's over.
That's true. There's nothing wrong with spending a lot of money on your wedding, but I think the focus is so much on the wedding at first that a lot of couples ignore the marriage part that comes with that.
Right.
And they put more time and energy and investment into the ceremony than they do into the lifelong marriage.
Right.
So if that's you, no condemnation, but
it's time to start,
It's time to start investing
get
in
a plan,
marriage. Yeah.
start making an investment. That's
Yeah.
right. It's not fun all the time. But it will become fun if you'll do it over time. That's what I've noticed with us. It's like, no, the initial getting started is like going to the gym and lifting weights. It sucks. No one likes to get started. No one likes to eat right. No one likes to do any of those things. But once you get into the flow, you don't mind it as bad.
You start seeing some benefit of it.
Right. But then just like that in marriage, once things start to go good, you'll quit.
That's true.
You know,
it's Christmas time and you quit working out for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden,
yeah, and then starting again sucks even worse.
And I think that's where the intentionality comes. And I think, I love, if I can interject this, one of the things in our reboot that couples come up with is a SMART plan. And it's not trying to take this whole big thing that we talk about and trying to take your marriage from chaos to good or from good to great. It's small things. It's small, measurable, actionable, repeatable, and timely steps. It's smart. It's a smart plan. And that's what it needs to be. When you look at something together as a couple in your intentionality, is it small enough that you can manage it? Is it, going to be something that you can take an action on? Is it measurable? That's a big thing.
Definitely.
And does it have a timeline? Because if you're building a house and you just take 65 years to do it, you're going to have stuff rot before you're done. So, you do need to have some right. timeline. But anyway, I kind of got off on that.
No, that's really good though. John Maxwell says, if you focus on goals, you may hit the goals, but that doesn't mean or guarantee growth. If you focus on growth, you will grow and always hit growth.
So profound and so simple.
I love that. And the reason, because a lot of times we take the frustration in a couple, as a couple, and we think, oh, well, maybe this just ain't meant to be, or maybe this is just not worth the effort. And we need to change our mindset and realize, no, this is an opportunity for growth. And if we'll focus on the growth, we'll grow into it. It's so important that you grow into the person that not only you want to be, but that your spouse needs you to be. I don't want to say want, because, want means you're trying to change who you are.
God's brought you together. There's a transformation process in each of us that he designs to leverage that towards each other and make each other better. But,
there are a few things that I know it hampered us, and I'm sure it hampers others. And one of them's that we would just assume automatically that our marriage would grow and get better every year.
Yeah, I do. And then we don't do anything else with it. Yeah. Well, that is definitely, we don't want to have assumptions to the point that we don't allow ourselves to be intentional about things.
Right. I remember we been with other couples and that actually made comments like, well, I just assume it'll be good once the kids are gone. I just assume, but yet you never built your marriage while the kids were there. So there's nothing for it to be good at when they're gone.
Right. There's no garden for anything to grow in if you haven't planted anything in it for years, and then, sometimes people just assume that you're automatically going to grow. Other times the question that people would say, or the comment is, I don't know how to grow. If it's not automatic, well, how do I grow? So sometimes there's just a lack of knowledge, and hopefully we can shed some light on that, of what growth is and what it isn't.
Yeah. And so many people use that as a reason to simply not try.
Right.
And that's probably one of the sadder things I think we come across.
We're adults at doing that, aren't we? When our kids are little, we push and push and push for them to grow and get better and do things. But when we get to be an adult, we're just done. We just check out. Yeah, we're done.
That's it's just
sad. Yeah,
and we've done it. We've all done it. We're not, there's the old saying: if you point a finger at somebody else, you got the three pointing back at you, and that's so true. So if one does not know how to grow, then one needs to ask the questions of how do I grow? They need to go in there, whether it's a pastor, whether it's, send us a message. If we don't have answers or suggestions, we definitely know people that have probably been down down your road that could definitely help you.
Well, I think one of the things to me when someone says, well, how do I grow? I think one of the first responses I have from my own experience is growth requires stretching. Growth is an expansion of capacity. Nothing grows into something. You don't grow smaller, you grow bigger.
Mm.
And I think if you want to grow your marriage from where it is to a better version, to expand that, the capacity of what your marriage could be, there's stretching involved. And stretching isn't always easy at first.
Right.
And I think it's, again, there's that word intentionality. So it's just taking whatever area of your marriage that you say, I don't know how to grow in, and begin to seek out small, measurable, actionable, repeatable, and timely things that you can do, whether that is watching a podcast, whether it is being intentional about doing some research about a particular a resource that can maybe help your marriage in the area that it's in, and begin to read, to listen, and to model what you see other marriages do. That's a way to grow. That's a way to stretch yourself into a different capacity of where you are right now.
Yeah. Another thing is a lot of times we don't think this is the time. Well, the kids are young. They require so much of our time. Or, well, now the kids are bigger. They require more time because you didn't assume they would.
Assume that they would, yeah.
But now you're at ball games all the time, or you're, FFA meetings, whatever it is. And so you just keep putting it off. And what that's actually called is there's the law of diminishing return.
Yeah.
Or intent.
Is it intent?
It's intent. But it's the same thing. Honestly, it's the same thing.
ROI is return on investment, I think.
I guess it ain't the same thing, but it's close enough. And what that's saying is the longer you wait to start, the harder it'll be to start.
Absolutely. Right. It's no different than at 56 now. It would be a lot harder for me to start fitness for the first time in my life because it's hard anyway. So the longer you wait, what happens is that if you wait too long to begin your journey to thrive in marriage, then you just don't have the energy to anymore.
Right.
And you just won't do it. And so it's a good thing. It's a good practice. An action that you can do as a couple is to just be real with yourself and ask the question of, what's my excuse? What excuse am I giving myself to not grow? And ask the question. And sometimes I love what your mom said. One of my favorite sayings in life was, if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll make an excuse. If you find you're always making excuses for not growing your marriage, there are two components to that. Number one, at least you don't have priority and you don't care about it. Number two, if you list excuses long enough, you'll hear how silly they are, and you'll think, you know what? I want this bad enough that excuse is no longer going to be a reason to keep me from this.
Right.
Whatever it is.
I know, like with us, when it came time to invest in our marriage, it was like, that's expensive. We don't really need to do that. And then you get to thinking like, well, I wonder how much a divorce would cost.
Yeah.
Or I wonder how much counseling is going to be, So it's
marriage does require investment. We invest in our kids, but we won't invest in our marriage, and you should invest in your kids. I'm just saying that, again, we assume that marriage is the one thing that doesn't need to be nurtured or invested in. And it's the biggest thing that needs to be nurtured and invested in.
Yeah. Another thing would be is, what if you're afraid of making a mistake?
This, I think, is big. And I think we've taught in our culture right now, and it's the word that you love, the word that I can't say or spell, vulnerability. I think that's what happens here. You've got to be vulnerable as a couple, because if I decide to take on some personal growth and I want to approach you with that and say, I'm going to do better with my fitness, I'm going to grow in this area, I really need you to have that conversation. And maybe I'm afraid that if I talk to you about this, you're going to belittle me. And you don't. I'm saying as in a marriage.
No, I get it.
But it's you can't be afraid to make a mistake. And sometimes we're afraid because we come up against an opportunity and it looks like uncertainty. Well, can I tell you that every opportunity is wrapped in uncertainty? Until you unwrap the uncertainty, you will never fully engage in the opportunity.
Right.
And so the question would be, to quote Robert Schuller, what would you attempt if you knew you could not fail? Okay, well, that seems like a glass question. But it's a great question to ask, because guess what? There is no such thing.
Right.
We fail forward. So we learn by failing. We grow by failing, but we never fail if we don't step out and attempt. So mistake is a misuse, I think, of that whole process.
I think
don't
also
be afraid to make a mistake.
It's almost being afraid to set the bar because you're afraid you can't hit it. You know, to me, there's so many things and there are different avenues in a marriage that I'm not happy with all of them not firing on all cylinders. You know what I mean? So if it means that I don't want to set goals for, like, for us, one thing we love doing is quality time. And so for me, I want that quality time to be great. So one thing we do, and the first time I didn't know exactly that you were going to like it, you know, but I thought, okay, she's in there working. I'm going to fix dinner. I'm going to have candlelight. We're going to, you know, and I had a pretty good idea that you would enjoy that. I mean, it sounds, it's yeah, I mean, it's going to be good right off the bat because you're not cooking.
That's a pretty good deal for me.
But, you know, I mean, there is a sense of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because what if you'd have came in and like,
I hate that. Why did you fix spaghetti?
Or, I know he's thinking this is just going to lean to something.
Right. Oh, that's good.
You know? And, you know, when instead of it seriously was a deal, like, I think she'll enjoy this. I think she'll be, you know,
you take care of me. Right. You're actually very good at that. But that's the vulnerability I was talking about is, you know, I'm afraid of making a mistake. So therefore, I won't talk to you about it and be vulnerable and share why I'm afraid. That's a hard conversation, even with somebody that you know is dear and trusts you, is to say, I am scared to do this because what if I screw it up? And you're like, well, what if you do? I'm here. We'll figure something else out.
Look at the responsibility there. It's not only one of your responsibility, whichever one is stepping out, taking the risk. It's also the responsibility of the one receiving to say, I am going to be grateful, even if this is not 100% the way I would do it or what I'm looking
that's
for.
So good too.
Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to hit you in the face there. So yeah, and
I think one of the things John says, once we decide to grow, so there's a thing right there. Once we decide to grow, it is a decision. Once you make a decision, one of the things he also says is you make that decision and you make that choice early, and then you manage it often.
Oh yeah.
Make the choice early in your marriage, in the early years of your journey together, to make a choice that we will grow. And then be intentional about managing that often, and don't be afraid of making a mistake in how you pursue growth.
Oh, that's good. I agree. You know, which leads us kind of to the next one, and that's sometimes we just feel like we have to be perfect or we shouldn't try.
Not me. That's
not true at all.
Nothing further from the truth. Yeah, perfection is definitely something that, and that, what that sounds like is, I can't move out of fear of making a mistake is the mistake section. The perfection says, I will move only when I have the perfect plan.
Right.
That is what they call it, analysis paralysis.
Right.
And that's my type of personality. I will analyze something to the point that it paralyzes me. And there is you can't wait till things are perfect in your marriage, especially to begin to grow. So that means you can't wait till your kids are gone. You can't wait till you have the house that you wanted. You can't wait till you drive the car you want. You can't wait till you have retirement. Whatever the check marks are, you're never going to find a place where it's a perfect opportunity,
right,
an environment to,
it's
decide to grow.
Right. It's never the right time to have a child. It's never the right time, to build a home. It's never the right time to work on your marriage.
A perfect time. It's never a perfect time.
But I like that better. There's never a perfect time. It's always the right time.
It's always the right time.
Let's do it right now. Let's do something. And it doesn't have to be large. It just has to be something, a little bit every day. That oak tree is planted and you don't see that huge oak you can sit underneath, in just a month, year, 5 years. But it grows a little bit every day.
And I think that it grows because it's nurtured and it's cultivated. I think as a couple, every single couple out there, whether you admit it or not, one of you is a perfectionist leaning, and the other one is more of a joyful spirit, which is my husband, who just doesn't think about the details. I think if you're a detail person, you might lean more into perfection. So whoever is a perfectionist, This is a trap that you have to watch out for. And if you're the spouse of a perfectionist, learn how to ask the better questions, learn how to approach and say it better to help the person who struggles with perfection, to not have to wait until it's the perfect time. Figure out a way, figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I tend to be the one before. I tend to be more the mistake. I'll get paralysis from the fear of making a mistake. Yeah. So, but another thing is we kind of want to feel like we need to be inspired to do something.
I love this one. I love this one because this is such a soapbox for me. Well, I don't feel like doing it. Well, I don't care. Do you want a thriving marriage or not? Right. Do you want a garden? Do you want something to grow? Do you want anything? Then it doesn't matter what you feel like.
Right.
You have to make the choice and you have to manage it often. Manage it often means I do it whether I feel like it or not.
Right.
Inspiration is wonderful. And I hope we do inspire people. There is a place for inspiration, and that is to create awareness. But once you've been made aware, you've been inspired, that is not the motivator any longer.
Yeah.
It's the plan that's the motivator.
Another thing John's always talking about is you have a better chance of getting inspired through movement than if you're just waiting to be inspired. So what we want to do is we want to do something in that area. I'd say this is an area, and it's where a lot of marriages start to break down, is in the physical part of the relationship. And it's because one or both just doesn't feel like it. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean you should put pressure on the other one or any of that kind of stuff. But if you are not being physical, you are going backwards.
Yeah.
If it's long periods of time. Sure. I mean, we missed today.
Well, that would be your.
No, that's my philosophy. Yeah, you're right.
No, I think that's a good point. Because I do think that, again, we assume that we can put that on the back burner and have it, especially women. I'm talking to the women here because we do have a different sex drive, most of us, than men. And we do have different physical environments, whether it's kids, having children. Just our biology in general can create a lot of fluctuations in how we feel. And it can be easy to say, I have a headache tonight. And you might have a headache tonight, but maybe it's, babe, I got a headache. Would you mind rubbing my neck for a minute? And help me relax. I mean, give your husband some opportunities and some hints as to things that might help you to meet him halfway. And that even though it's maybe not, it can be fulfilling in both sides.
Well, when you're dealing with inspiration, you never want to allow your reasons to be an excuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Say that again.
Yeah, you never want to allow your reasons to be an excuse. Mm-hmm. You'll have thousands of reasons not to work on your marriage, but they can't be an excuse. You got to say, okay, even though that's a good reason, I'm still going to do something. And I'm not talking about the physical in this area. I'm talking about do something.
Yeah.
No, sit together close on the couch.
Mm-hmm. Hold hands.
Mm-hmm. Walk by and just, acknowledge the other one instead of just sitting over and either reading a book or watching TV or searching through Facebook, and I'm not against any of those things, especially the book. The book is probably beneficial. Excuse me. But, you can't just sit there and ignore your spouse. So you got to do something. And I want to say the quote exactly right.
Okay.
You are more likely to act yourself into a feeling than feel yourself into an action. I love that.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
You're more likely to act yourself. We're talking about direction here again. So not having inspiration is related to that. If you don't feel inspired, you're not going to act. So it goes all the way back to being intentional. Mm-hmm. It goes back to not being afraid to grow, to develop a plan for growth, and to revisit that, which is actually something we help couples do in a reboot.
Yeah.
It's very intentional with that. So as a couple, if you say, we're a little bit stagnant, where do we need to thrive? Talk about it, write it down.
Yes.
This is where we need to thrive. How did we used to thrive in this? How can we thrive again? What are the steps we need to take? How often do we need to do that? Those are very simple things, but if you will begin to act on those, the feelings will come.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing I want to point out right there is what was Stephanie doing right there? She was asking a better question. every one of those was a question that built on a question. And those are what you're looking to do. You're looking to ask the questions that you can find a better answer to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are
Unpack the layers. Unpack the layers.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
That's fine. You can see mine too.
Oh, this is a good one.
This is probably there's so many ways this applies. You can't compare your spouse, or you can't compare yourself to what you think your spouse is thinking or whatever.
Others are better than I am. Other marriages are better than ours. Other husbands are better than you. Other wives are better than me. It's blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, well, she does this for her husband. She cooks every night,
Not this chick. Girls, if you need somebody to tell you it's okay not to cook every night, I probably shouldn't say that, but here I am. No, but it did. It did. I used to think I had to do that for a lot of reasons, and it wasn't bad things. It was just your mom was an amazing cook. My mom always provided good meals every night for us on the table. So there was definitely a comparison for me that's how I had to be. And my life is different. I have a different track than both of them did, and we live in a different generation as well. So I had to. They were by no means, give me a reason to compare, but they were, by modeling, were giving me a good example. And I thought I had to be exactly like that. So,
that's really good.
It's, reminding yourself that, I love the picture of everybody should have a Paul and a Titus. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be somebody that you're better than, and there's always going to be some better than you. Right. And that's okay. If you should never be at the head of the class, you should never just be Paul all the time.
Yes.
And I think people that always think they're Paul, and I'm just using that in the context of the hierarchy of that, that you're setting yourself up for some failure because, you're living in a glass house at that point. So.
Yeah. And for men especially, and I hear there's some women that do this, but for men especially, and I don't want this to be, you shouldn't be doing this type thing. And I don't want to make it over spiritual either. But that is, to me, this is why you don't watch porn.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Good point.
Because
Good point.
It's just beyond what you are going to do in your bedroom. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if not, congratulations.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. So you don't want to, as the viewer, to be comparing your wife to those women. And you don't want to be the spouse of the one that feels like you're being held to that standard.
And I think women would be the ones that would feel it the most.
The most, yes, absolutely.
Definitely, you're feeling, even if your husband isn't comparing you to that image, all you hear is that that's what's important to men. And so you're automatically going to think, well, turn the lights off because I don't look like that. And I think that's definitely, so comparison is definitely something that is, if you don't learn to get out of that comparison ditch, it's going to be really hard to grow, because what's happening is, instead of looking inward at the transformation and the growth that God has placed within you and the seeds of greatness that He's planted inside of you, you are looking outward to see how somebody else thinks that you should grow. So you're comparing and you're trying to get to that place that's not for you.
Right.
And that's why it's a law that works against you.
Yes. So we want to wind it up with the last one.
One of our favorite, the expectation gap, because we talk about this all the time.
Yes. I thought it would be easier than this. Why?
Because our expectations and our reality are too far apart.
Right.
There's a gap.
And so that creates frustration. That's right. So I don't want to ever say lower your expectations.
Manage your expectations.
But manage them. And there's nothing wrong with us. Set the bar high, but understand. Again, this is like a John Maxwell quote thing.
It is, isn't it?
Success is uphill
all the way.
All the way. And a successful marriage, there is no saying, I'm just going to relax, because it's like going up a hill. If you stop, you'll start to roll backwards a little ways. Gravity will pull you back. And so we don't want to.
And in the process of that, it's enjoy the journey. It is an uphill but some of the most beautiful vistas are at the top of a mountain. So anticipate, even in the busy or the hard work of marriage, I guess.
Yeah.
Hard work is healthy. It's not a negative.
Very satisfying too.
It's very satisfying. And you can work hard and not kill yourself. You can work hard at your marriage and not be miserable. If you're miserable because you think you're working so hard in your marriage, then you're not doing it right.
Right.
Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was built methodically, and it was built with a plan, and it still sits there today.
Right. And I'd say here's one thing you want to definitely avoid, and that's the Facebook marriage. If you watch Facebook, either the marriage sucks or you would just never know that anybody ever had a problem.
That kind of goes back with the comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, but what you get to thinking is, man, that person sure is lucky. Their husband never treats them bad, Yeah. And the fact is, that's probably not the case.
They treat you bad sometimes.
They're just,
sorry.
They're just not, seeing that. So,
yeah. So I think, with all of those, there was quite a few there, and we may have to, there's a lot more we could go into on all that, but I think these are ways to grow. And that was the first. Intentionality is only the first law. There's 15 of these we're gonna break into with you guys. But again, as a married couple, learn to ask the better questions. Where do you want to go in life? What direction do you want to go? These are things. I said earlier, are we kind of stagnant, babe? I mean, sometimes we talk about when we're dating, and we talk about the funny things, and it kind of just stirs up that memory of, oh yeah, we haven't done that in a long time. Let's go do that, or something. And what's the farthest that you can imagine going?
That's a dream question.
That's a dream question. And how long will this take? There's the timing of it. So it's all those things together, but it goes back to communication, and being intentional about what you're talking about, being intentional about showing your spouse that your marriage is a priority by having this conversation.
Yes.
And talking these things out.
Yeah. So we will stop that, and we will put these questions in the notes. And so if you need to look at those, and they're great dinner questions. Those are
really are.
When you're sitting there to,
what do you like?
And you're probably going to get this from your husband the first time. I don't know.
To the lake?
Huh?
To the lake?
Yeah.
Go to the lake or the golf course. That's okay.
But just, keep asking the questions.
Ask these questions.
Yeah.
What is it about that you love so much?
Right.
So was there something in your childhood? That's the question. Continue to have a conversation with your spouse, even if they give you a one-word answer. It's not a yes or no. It's a curiosity, and it's an exploration question.
Yep.
That's what it is.
So thank you for joining us on Pillow Talk. You can go and follow us on all the social media. If you want to go to our webpage, it's foreverwithpurpose.com. The link to our social media will be there. You can fill out the keep in contact part, and that would let us, if we're doing anything
in your area,
special or in your area, we can send you a little email saying, hey, come join us. So we want to thank you so much, because we really do believe that you can end frustration with better communication. And we will see you on the next Pillow Talk.